Thanks very much, Vanessa. Now, federal Liberal MPs have been told to trust the Prime Minister and fall in behind his decision to press on with a debt levy on high earners. So, will this be worth all the political pain? Liberal backbencher Kelly O'Dwyer joins us now as we head towards the federal budget. Kelly O'Dwyer, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be with you, Virginia and Michael.
Good morning. Can you live with the fallout from this broken promise?
Well, look, we don't know what's going to be in the budget because neither you nor I are psychics. It hasn't yet been delivered. It will be delivered on the 13th of May. And I think we need just to take a collective breath and see what's actually in it. But what we do know is that we have been left with an enormous mess by Labor. And that's one of the reasons, you know, I'm here to talk to you today, because you don't need to take my word for it. The facts are here in black and white in the booklet that we have put together on Labor's mess, on the debt that they have created for every Australian. It's upwards around $15,000 for every man, woman and child. But going forward, if we do nothing today, it's going to be around about just under $25,000. Now, that is very, very significant. Labor broke the budget and they have refused to help fix it.
All right, well, let's get back to, and we would be taking your word for it because this is a government-produced booklet. Let's leave that to one side, shall we? And also, we also need to leave to the side the deficit projections because, as the ABC fact-check unit has found, Chris Bowen's claims that you've actually doubled the deficit by changes to government spending and changes to government assumptions is proven. So that's been established by ABC fact-check, and we're going to stick by that. So let me repeat my question to you. The political pain and fallout is already clear and already here, no matter what is announced in the federal budget. That's the assumption about the debt levy. Can you live with the consequence of that broken promise?
Well, the pain has been created by Labor. Make no mistake about it. And Labor had heroic projections in their budgets. I mean, let's not forget, they promised that they were going to deliver a surplus over 500 times. They didn't deliver one. And this was at a time that we experienced our highest terms of trade. Every single budget they delivered had a deficit in it, $191 billion worth, and going forward it's going to be $123 billion if we do nothing. Now, you know, the key point to make here is that we need to take action. We need to take action so that we can make sure we need to be able to take action in our budget to make decisions in the national interest to arrest the enormous spending growth. Now, I mean, this is not something that we have manufactured, as has been suggested by commentators and by the Labor Party. This is something that the International Monetary Fund has said. They did a recent report that looked at the 17 most advanced economies, and they found that in Australia we have the fastest and greatest spending growth. Now, that's ahead of the USA, Canada, France, Korea, Japan. Now, that is not something that is sustainable.
Voters can read that, excuse me for interrupting, but they can also recall the very clear, the very firm promises made by Tony Abbott as opposition leader about no new taxes, no increases in existing taxes. Coupled with that, let's hear what Matthias Cormann, the finance minister, had to say yesterday.
We understand why there is a level of concern. Coalition members and senators don't like higher taxes. I don't like higher taxes. We want taxes to be lower. We want taxes to be as low as possible. What we would ask people across Australia to do is to trust us. We have reviewed all of the information on coming into government. We've worked very carefully through all that was in front of us, and we have made the judgments that we think are necessary in order to strengthen the country.
So, given all of that and given all of those about to be broken promises, how can any voter possibly trust the Abbott government?
But do you know what's in the budget, Michael? I mean, do you know?
The finance minister had a very firm opportunity to rule out the debt tax. In fact, to use the words, there'll be special immediate measures next week. So you're telling us there won't be a debt tax?
My point is that you don't know exactly what's going to be announced, and there can be a lot of fevered speculation about this, but we won't know until the 13th of May. But what we do know is that we have a huge problem that we need to fix. It's a problem that was created by Labor, left by Labor. It's a problem that, if we do not fix it, will be a burden on future generations.
All right, well, let me try and meet you then where you're arguing this morning. And it seems to me that you're constructing then an argument to support the idea of tough measures and introducing something like a debt levy. So what you're saying this morning, what the government's saying, is that whatever you go on and do, and whatever broken promise you might deliver in the budget, it's justified.
What Tony Abbott has said is he's going to keep his commitments, and our commitment to the Australian people would be that we would fix the budget.
So measures then are justified.
So what
you have a basis for doing it.
What we're saying is that we will take the decisions necessary in the national interest in order to fix the budget, to make sure it's on a sustainable footing, not just because we believe that having, black lines rather than red lines through the budget is important in and of itself, but because if you don't have a sustainable budget, you cannot provide the services or the infrastructure that people expect in Australia and demand. You can't put aside money for a rainy day, for the problems that we may face in the future that we don't yet know about.
But that's precisely why supporters of the government were saying before the election, don't rule out any new taxes because you may find that you need to introduce them. Don't hamstring yourself in that way. So weren't those early promises, aren't they turning out to be a bit of a mistake?
Well, Tony Abbott as Prime Minister said we're going to keep our commitments. He's reiterated that.
You're not actually dealing with the question here about the promise of no new taxes.
Which was a commitment as well, a very firm commitment.
The question is, are we going to keep our commitments? Tony Abbott as Prime Minister has said we will keep our commitments. Look, I can't tell you what's in the budget. I'd love to be able to tell you, but I actually don't know the answer to that.
I don't think we need you to.
The Treasurer clearly understood
there's going to be some
cuts introduced. He'll deliver it on the 13th of May, but, we've got to learn the lessons of history here, and that's why we've produced this booklet. We know that when we were elected to government in 1996 as a coalition government, we had to clear away $96 billion of Labor's debt then. We had to produce surpluses rather than deficits so that instead of bleeding from the future, we were going to build for the future. Now, that is something we have to do again, and that is why the Australian people know that we will make the adult decisions required on the 13th of May to put in place an economic action agenda.
If one of the adult decisions is increasing the petrol excise, for instance, is that a measure you'd be happy to sell to voters?
Well, look, I'm not going to speculate on the measures that might be in the budget because, as I said to you before, I simply don't know what's going to be in the budget. And I think you need to look at budgets holistically. You need to look at all of the measures combined. But you do have to understand that nobody voluntarily performs open heart surgery unless it is necessary to do so. And the clear message that we have received from senior economists, the clear message from the Treasury Secretary himself, the clear message from the IMF, the clear message from every respected economic person, not only in Australia but internationally, is that our budget is not sustainable, it needs to be fixed, and we're not going to shirk that task.
Your former boss and the man who held your seat before you, Peter Costello, describes the debt levy thus, and I think we can have a look at it as well as me reading it out to you. The proposed levy has no economic benefit. It will detract from growth by reducing consumption. It'll produce no interest rate reduction, and if it lasts 4 years and raises $10 billion, the most it could save would be $400 million in annual interest, hardly enough to touch the size of the annual $12 billion, the government financing requirement. Do you agree with him, or is he wrong?
Peter Costello was the greatest treasurer that this country has ever seen, just as John Howard was the greatest Prime Minister this country has ever seen.
Well, if you believe that, then surely you'd listen to him.
The one thing that both of them understood was that Labor knows how to wreck a budget, and Labor racks up debt when they're given the opportunity to spend other people's money. And they both together put in place an economic action agenda that tackled that problem. That's something that we're going to do as well.
Can I just try and get you to answer a question straight this morning? That would be terrific. Just one. Do you agree with him or not?
Well, what I'm saying is that he
with him or not?
Well, he undertook the decisions necessary at that time to put in place measures that were important in the national interest. That's something that our government will do as well.
Do you mind if I interpret that as you agreeing with him then?
Look, you can. I'll leave the commentary to you. You can interpret it any way you like.
I'm just trying to get a straight answer.
Well, I'm giving you the straight answer, and the straight answer is we are going to need to tackle the problems left to us by Labor.
We're going to leave it there. Kelly O'Dwyer, thanks so much.
Terrific. Great to be with you.